Joy is deep, it's constant, and whereas happiness is based on happenings and situations in our life, and happiness is from pleasant circumstances. Joy is steady, really, as long as we trust in God.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to episode 19 of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we have a very special guest, so I'll turn it over to Tanya to do the introduction.
We are joined today by the one and only my mom, Debbie Nelson. Debbie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a privilege.
It's funny because normally I'll obviously call you mom, but today it's Debbie. So Debbie, we like to start off the show by asking who you are.
Wow, that entails quite a bit, actually. I guess I'll start with the fact that I am one proud mama of 3 adult children. And yes, when they are children, they're always your children, no matter what age they are. And the fact that they have blessed me with 7 wonderful grandchildren. That's the highlight of who I am. And also, I would say that apart from them and my love for the Lord, I have been described as one who enjoys copious amounts of popcorn while watching a great movie. I also really enjoy listening to music, moving my feet and dancing to it. Also reading a book, preferably by the river's edge, just relaxing. Really highlights for me outdoors are going for adventurous walks and hikes during any season, whatever season it is. You'll find me out there and just really enjoying nature. So also, I would say that my life has been all the more enriched by the diversity of people who have crossed my path and who are currently walking with me in this journey of life. I am right now Pastor of Adult Ministries and Pastoral Care at International Gospel Center in Kitchener, which has been my home church for I think about maybe 39 years or so, 38 years now. And during this time, I have been involved, either worked or volunteered with people of all ages, right from children up to seniors. I've dipped my hand in each one of those areas of life, and I have found it quite fulfilling. I would describe or share that maybe my personal motto for life is today I choose joy. And yes, it has been a choice. That is a very important part of my life. My passion is to see people of all ages walking in freedom, particularly spiritual freedom. And in this walk with God, with our Creator. I also welcome the opportunities to share how I have dealt with life storms. And there have been a few of them, but I have been equipped with the tools that I need and have found them very helpful to get through those storms. So yeah, that's a bit about who I am.
Perfect. Love it. So you mentioned today you choose joy. That's your motto that you go with. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, just how to find that joy and keep it and while going through all life storms pretty much. So I got to ask, what is your personal definition of joy?
Well, to me, when describing joy, I pretty much need to make a comparison with the emotion of happiness. Joy is inward, and it comes from trusting in the Lord, trusting and knowing God. Joy is deep, it's constant. And whereas happiness is based on happenings and situations in our life, and happiness is from pleasant circumstances. Joy is steady, really, as long as we trust in God. Happiness is unpredictable. Joy defeats discouragement. And at times, happiness covers it up and maybe only lasts for a short period of time. Joy is lasting, and happiness is temporary. Now, I have also discovered that the definition of joy is something that goes very deep. It's rooted, and at times it needs to be stirred up. It's not always on the surface, and it's not always until we really need it that we discover that it's there also. So yeah, that's maybe a little bit of how I would define what joy is to me. And it's something that that we need to choose on a day-to-day basis.
Now, you said that today I choose joy is your day-to-day mantra, your motto.
Mm-hmm.
So when did this become, like, if you can think back, when did this actually become your motto, your what you follow every day? And I'm sure we talk about some of the life storms. What was it that really made that manifest to you as something that you wanted to, you made that conscious decision and then decided that this is the path that you wanted to follow?
Well, there's been a few scenarios, but one in particular that stands out to me was when a crisis came into my life that I really never thought that I would be able to deal with. We all have those things that we think, I can do anything in life, but just not this. I can face anything, but just not this. And to each one of us, that could be a totally different scenario. My particular situation came when my marriage of many years came to an unexpected end. And my identity was at question, my value, who am I now? Where do I go from here? How do I carry on? And just throwing out lots of questions. Faith is very important to me. It's a vital part of who I am. And I remember at that time sitting on the edge of my bed and just crying out. Yeah, even with joy, there are tears, let me tell you. But really discovering at that point in time what real joy really was. As I sat at the edge of my bed, I was impressed just upon my heart. I felt, Debbie, you must choose to dig deep into the reservoir of the joy of your Lord, because that is your only constant. Just like that, as plain as day, I knew that I was going to need to make a choice, So every day I needed to choose, do I get out of bed? Every day I needed to choose, do I still have value? What direction am I going to take? So I would say that was a major crossroads in my life where I needed to now put into practice and really walk out that motto about joy, because it's not always on the surface. It does sometimes need to be stirred up. But my favorite scripture, which has really helped me through this time, is found in Nehemiah. And that is, the joy of the Lord is my strength. So I kind of encompassed both of those together and started that journey. And it hasn't let me down.
It's interesting how you say that, because that joy is at the core of who you are, right? Because we go through different
Mm-hmm.
situations, the day could be a bad day, right? But I guess it's ending it on what is your core, like what it is that you really want to focus on, right? So even looking at when you were diagnosed with cancer, and yeah, you could say today I choose joy. Well, not necessarily that day. That day it was fear, sadness, worry, all those things, right? So how do you navigate when it just continues, when things continue to happen in life?
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question, Tanya. It really is day to day. Like I'm I'm not talking about denial here, okay? There are those difficult times, those storms, those crises. And again, I think it does come back to that choice and really knowing deep down inside that there is, I call it a well, there or a reservoir deep down within me that I have to choose to go to. It's kind of, I don't know, maybe, some people have a happy place, somewhere where they go when they're in this time of crisis. These things do happen. There is fear. There are nights of falling asleep, hugging my Bible with tears, but knowing that I will wake up refreshed and renewed because of where I've put my hope. That is constant. I might change, my circumstances around me might change, my emotions might change, but my constant is the joy that my Heavenly Father has placed within me because I have chosen to lean on Him. I've chosen to put my trust in Him. Doesn't mean there aren't going to be difficult times of crisis, like, you've mentioned with the cancer and also the divorce, and then going septic, and really having to fight and to, there's work on our part, I guess is what I'm trying to say too, right? That joy is there, but we have to choose to walk in it. It's like that strength has been given to us, but we have to choose to walk in it. So yeah, that's really been core for me. It's been at the center.
And I think it's interesting too, because that's something that has to happen independently, right? Like I look in your situation, you've been blessed with a really great support system. So when you were dealing with your cancer, you had many people that were able to literally walk alongside you, go to appointments with you and stuff like that. And then when you were recovering from, being septic, now I say we, because we could all have told you and spoke encouraging words to you and prayed for you and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you're going to bed on your own, right? You're your own person. So it has to come from within.
Right. And I think the big piece there too, right in that is, I choose joy, right? It's a choice, and you're, in spite of the circumstances, you're not necessarily letting the circumstances, although it is going to take a toll. There are going to be times where you don't feel great. You're not happy about the situation that's at hand, but you are ultimately choosing joy in that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is so true, Brian, because that joy is not always on the surface, right? And, again, it's that digging deep and that stirring it up, right? And people who know our core values can remind us as well. Remember your motto, Deb. Remember you choose joy.
During these difficult times, I found it very important, very vital to have a support system. Knowing who to reach out to, who to connect with during different times was very important. And I think those people that we have in our lives that know us can also pick up on our change of our emotions, our experiences. But I would probably say the number one thing that was important is not to be afraid to reach out. So many times, we hear this little voice in our head, oh, nobody else is going through this, or, oh, you can do this on your own. But oftentimes that really is deceiving. And because what happens is the more we withdraw and the more we pull back, the more difficult the situation becomes. We are created to be connected beings, to need each other. And so it's okay. It's okay to have a support system. It's okay to reach out and to ask for help.
Great. So the other thing I'd be curious to kind of dive into a little bit more as well is, just from your own experience, and you can even share some recommendations you have that maybe you've seen work for other people, but given all of the trials and the different challenges that you've went through over the last number of years, what were some of the things that you did, or some of the things that you found just to be effective in getting back to that state of joy?
Well, for me, music, the type of music that I listen to. I think we all know music really does play an important role in our emotions. It can cause different emotions within us depending on what we listen to. I know for myself at night, in order to be able to fall asleep, I needed some peaceful, even just instrumental worship music, some instrumental, peaceful music. It brings to mind when I was in the hospital recovering from sepsis. I remember my kids bringing the laptop up to the hospital and setting it on Dappy T Keys, who plays instrumental music, and they'd set it for like 8 hours, and that just soothed my spirit. It soothed every part of my being, gave me peace, and made it possible for me to fall asleep. I still remember nurses coming into my room in the morning and saying that when they did the night check-in of my room, they wanted to just stay in that room for the rest of their shift. They felt so at peace. So that was number one for me. I would say have your go-to people. As I mentioned earlier, those that you can call upon, those that you can just pick up the phone and cry with and don't even have to explain anything. That's powerful. And just know that they're on the other end and they're there with you, supporting you. Also, I remember searching the scriptures on joy and just remembering, highlighting them and doing the same regarding scriptures on fear, because fear set in many a times. I remember going through anxiety, and that was a real crisis for me many years ago. And even now, when it tries to, rise up within me, I go to those scriptures, and I remember back to what got me through, and I apply it again. Whatever the crisis has been, I have found those tools. I like to call them, in my tool belt. I pull them out for different scenarios, and music and support group, scriptures, prayer, those, and going for walks. There's something about connecting out in nature that does more than what we would ever anticipate. It feels like, man, the last thing you want to do is get up and go. But the best thing you could do is get up and go, even if it's down to the corner. I remember having to learn how to walk all over again when recovering from sepsis. And just walking to the corner of my street with a walker gave me such a feeling of victory. And then having to turn around and feel like I was crawling back, but I did it. So for me, those were very important things. And, each one of us might come up with our own list. But those are a few things that I would recommend. They have worked for me.
That's great. Thanks so much. So you talk at conferences, seminars, give workshops and stuff like that, and you have different topics, obviously, that you teach on. One of them is that you like to focus on too, is being braver than you believe. And I just like that saying so much. So I got a question for you. Thinking back, When was the first time you realized this to be true for you?
I'm thinking back to just a few years ago, actually, when I was still in the recovery of sepsis and being asked by one of my past youth from when I was youth pastor, and he asked me to come to his high school where he was now teaching and speak to youth and teachers and people of the community. And at that particular moment, that was very challenging for me. I knew what I had recovered from. I knew all about the joy, but I had to go deeper again. This was pretty big. I wanted to say no right off the bat because physically, how was I going to do something like this? Then I remembered, I think most of us know Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh. When Christopher Robin says to Pooh, promise me you'll always remember you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And I changed my response to that young man and I said, yes, I'll come. I will come and I will speak. And that was a lot of what I spoke about, being brave in those difficult situations. I think for me, especially, it was because one more situation. There had been a lot in maybe 6 years or so of my life, but I knew that, again, deep down inside, I could be brave. I could gain strength and courage to accept this challenge, to come, even in my weakened state, and speak before these youth in this high school and the teachers and adults, again, of this community, and believing that I had something to share with them. I had a message of hope that we don't know really how brave we are until we have to be. I guess I look back too, and I have discovered that there's beauty in our brokenness. So when we're going through these difficult times, it might look and feel like we're in a mess, but when we sift through it all, there's beauty in it, because it's in those times that we discover just how brave we really are and how strong we are.
It's such a key example right there that doors open when you decide to be brave, right? Because,
yes.
like that's another chance for you to speak and do what you're passionate about. Totally, different audience even than who you would typically speak to. But it's just neat that, getting out of that box when you decide to do things like that and just watching how things unfold.
For sure, for sure. And it's so encouraging to look back at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd say, when I think about joy and where it's brought me to, it's kind of like let's face it, we all go through crisis at some season in our life, right? It's just like the seasons of nature: winter, spring, summer, fall. We'd all love to live maybe in the fall or the summer seasons, maybe even in spring, but winter always comes. But we know that after winter, there's going to be new life. There's going to be spring. I often compare seasons of my life, seasons of our life, just like the natures of season, and knowing that, yes, new opportunities will come. And through that, we will experience new life, new growth. As you say, the doors being opened, new things that maybe we never thought we'd experience before. When each of us goes through a crisis, I kind of look at this crisis like, I don't know if you've ever, when you were a child, ever jumped the waves. You go to the beach and you're jumping the waves and you're having a great time, until all of a sudden you mistime one of those waves and you're now under the wave instead of on top of it. That's sort of how I compare the storms of life. It's like it's mistimed. You're not expecting it, and all of a sudden you find yourself underneath the wave, and it takes your breath away. So that's sort of, to me, how a crisis is. But then you Eventually, you get up above the wave again. It's not without struggling. It's not without even somebody having to reach out a hand and pull you up. But, in those situations, we would all really be grateful for someone to throw us a lifeline at that time, wouldn't we? Just to throw out that rubber dinghy and say, grab a hold, we'll bring you to safety. Well, that's how it is, even, going through this crisis of life. Jesus has that lifeline for each one of us, that lifeline of joy. And he's throwing it out there to us when we feel like we're sinking. The choice is ours. Are we going to grab onto it and let him pull us to safety? Or are we going to just keep struggling for a little while longer? I've chosen many a times to grab onto the lifeline that he's given to me. And, that's something that I encourage others to do also. We don't have to do this struggle on our own. We don't have to face these seasons of crisis on our own. So I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful for that.
Now, I want you to do something with me here. I want to go back to one of the storms that you outlined early on, looking at, as you put it, the unexpected end to your marriage. Now, if you were able to go back to that time, knowing what you know now, and sit down like we're doing right now and have a cup of coffee with Debbie at that time, what advice would you give her to help prepare for the storms ahead?
It's going to be okay, and you're still Debbie. Who you are has not changed. Just a portion of your life has. So that would probably be the biggest for me.
So yeah, I guess it sounds like obviously things change in life, and it sounds almost like you kind of had to redefine who you are, or kind of find who you are, as a lot of people put it. Yeah, I found myself. You'll hear people often say that. Is that kind of where the journey took you next?
It was definitely a journey. That I can say for sure. I think what I would probably, if I had a chance to say something to myself back then, I would say, you are still Debbie. Who you are has not changed. Just a portion of your life has changed. And you can do this. Needing to really do some self-talk. I would definitely talk to myself and say that, you can do this. People have your back. You are still the same person you were before. You will be able to do things you never thought you would ever be able to do, for sure. Yeah, just be bold and courageous, I'd probably tell myself, and take one step at a time, one day at a time. Sometimes take 1 minute at a time. That's vital.
Now, now that I brought you back to think about the difficult parts, is there anything that you found, just again through the journey, all of the difficult times that you went through, you could overcome a lot more than you ever thought that you could? Mm-hmm. So has that changed the way that you approach things in life, or just the way that you view some things? And has, I guess what I was trying to get to is, has that made some things easier for you now that you've been through those difficulties?
Yeah, definitely, Brian. That's a really good question. I think I've become more of a risk taker, because that's not something I really have done a lot of, especially on my own. It's easier to take risks when you have someone to take them with, right? When you have somebody walking by your side, we can do this together. We can do all things. Then when you have to say, I can do all things, I can do this, on my own, I can buy a house. Never thought I'd ever be able to do that, shakingly signing papers. That was all unknown territory for me. Probably say a big one is I've been able to laugh at myself more. Maybe that's one thing that if I could go back to dear younger me, I'd probably say I've been able to laugh more at myself. Like really make some crazy jokes about myself in ways that I never would have before, you know, even with the cancer. And I think of different scenarios now, and I'm like, wow, did I just say that? Or did I just do that? And I make myself laugh, you know? So there's been a lot of growth, right? You know, with every garden needs a little bit of rain to see growth. Let's just put it that way. Yes, it needs sunshine, but it needs rain. There's not going to be any growth without rain. And there's even scripture that says, you know, unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it won't bring forth fruit. And so, yeah, in those times, we really discover things about ourselves and growth. So lots of laughter. Yeah.
That's definitely one thing I can say, you know, being around and seeing it firsthand. That's one thing that I definitely did notice as well, especially if I make a questionable joke 15 years ago, I would have gotten corrected a lot differently than I would now. So, and sometimes you surprise me and you're the one making those jokes, not to the same level of questionableness, you know, that's not a word, but not to that same degree as I would, but you know, sometimes you do throw me off with those as well.
Yeah, it's finding that deep joy, right? You know, and having those deep belly laughs. I've always liked to laugh, you know, with family, with friends. That was never the issue. I think maybe I would clarify too, what I laugh at today is different than what I would have laughed at years ago. Yeah, I'm all about, you know, loving life, loving laughter, and laughing out loud. I think it just becomes more, it's become more free now. That's how I get through things. I many times I hear people comment, you know, and they'll laugh at something I've said, or, you know, and I say, you know, that's how I get through, right? And it's not about denial, but that's my coping, my joy that is so much on the surface right now that it sort of bubbles out sometimes before I even can think about it. But it's what gets me through. It really does. Even when we're feeling unhappy, we can still experience the joy of the Lord. Like even in those unhappy times, right? As the joy gives us contentment in the place that we're in, whatever that place looks like.
And the other piece too that I really noticed is, you know, you talk about being, you know, less risk averse these days, because that's the one thing I can say I've definitely seen a difference in as well. And I think a lot of that is just really, you know, really directly tied to your faith as well, because to be able to take some of those risks, as we say, you know, you do have to rely on your faith, because you don't always know 100% what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah, that's for sure. A lot of unknown in this life, isn't there?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That was a great conversation, Mom. And so it's so easy to listen to you talk, way easier than like when you used to lecture us like as kids, way easier now to listen. And your words are so encouraging. So we always like to ask, where can we find you on social media? And what are you up to these days?
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you know, on our church, International Gospel Center, on our church Facebook page too. I have some encouragement videos, I call them, just little snippets, words to encourage people during their day. And well, you know, currently I've not really found too many places outside due to this COVID thing, which has been a real struggle for me. I am very much a people person, very used to being out amongst, you know, like with my family, my friends, church family. So this has been a little bit of struggle for me, but yeah, I'm pretty much out there, and I love being in touch with people. I am open to, you know, once we get through this COVID, once again, starting up speaking at different events and speaking on joy, speaking on grace, on many different topics. Just, you know, how to keep ourselves filled up. I say, like, you know, to fill my cup. And that's basically where I'm at right now.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Mom, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.